How you doing, guys? So first thing is this is recorded just so that you're aware. I have my laptop here to the side, and another quick check that you guys can hear me okay. Just send us another thumbs up. I know you can see me okay, and you should also be able to see this presentation. So you should be able to see the presentation, you should be able to hear me and see a little bit of me. Let me see, once that's cracking, we'll get going. See what the chat says. So again, this is being recorded. When it comes to asking questions as well too, there'll be a kind of one or two quick questions at the end that you can ask, and then we'll go from there. So yeah, I can hear it. Yeah, I can hear it. We're spot on. We're ready to go. Okay, so this workshop, who's it for? It's for anybody and everybody who wants to improve their overall fitness. Essentially, we are talking mainly about the concept to ski erg and bike erg because you use them a lot in the gym. So you want you to be quite competent at them. Whether your goal is weight loss, general kind of wellness, feeling good, conditioning is a big, big piece of that. Everybody has to work on the conditioning. Sometimes it's over the year, as well as you have to work on your strength work. You have to work on them. And when I say work on them, you have to go to get them to the next level to then maintain it as long as you can throughout the course of the year. Same goes for your strength work as well too. So a lot of clients, when they join, they come in, they start doing the strength work, the mobility, they're then functioning quite well. Then around 12 weeks into that, it's time to get a little bit more serious about doing their conditioning piece as well too. So as we move on, if this was to work nicely, the content of this is basically ski erg technique. The technique on the bike is straightforward. Get on it and go. Body position can change a little bit, but mainly about ski erg technique. We're going to talk about the flywheel, the damper, what that does, why you should never go near a 10 on the ski erg. We're also going to talk about the dial. So the dial being this thing. We're going to briefly talk about that, but you should be learning how to use that in your sessions and messing around with it. So you do actually get some data from it, because it's the data that comes from those machines that makes it much easier to learn pacing and be a lot more effective with your training. Training zones as well too. So like easy aerobic, getting a sweat, training for those longer duration pieces, and then those higher intensity sprints, and why you don't do one all the time versus the other, and why a good mix is very beneficial. Then the whole bike versus ski, differences and what you should be doing. So when it comes to the ski erg, firstly, the technique, a 1% basically deviation on anything can end you up in a very different position over 7 minutes. If you're going hell for leather at a sprint at this over 1 minute, technique doesn't matter as much, but it still can't get the power output. So what we want to make sure on this is that when you're doing this, you're training and thinking about more of those longer pieces, 7 minutes plus, and that's where the technique really matters. When we talk about the flywheel, and I'm going to stop the presentation now so you can see the main screen. When we talk about the flywheel, so this wee wheel down here, sorry, where am I? Can't see myself. There we go. So this wheel down here, this is called your flywheel. It goes from basically like a 1 up to 10. When it's at a 10, it lets more air into the fan, which means that these are harder to pull when it's at number 10, okay? So as I'm going, it's a lot harder to pull. And as I'm doing it, I might be able to do this for a minute or so, but then it's like doing numerous pull-ups. It's very fatiguing very, very quickly. There's an item called a drag factor when you're using a ski erg or using a bike erg. What a drag factor is basically when you pull, the amount of lag. So if you imagine a boat, or if you're going along the snow and you're pushing yourself, you're sliding, but then you start slowing down. You want to be basically at a steady slide the whole way, or like on a row, you want to be nice and smooth going across the lake or the river. I'm not going to go into that today, but basically what I mean by that is that you don't want to be dragging yourself with this machine. You want to be nice and smooth. So anything from like your 3 or 4 is loads. Stroke rate, we'll talk about that as well too. But we're talking about the ski erg, and we're talking about items such as your damper. Keep this at a 1 to 4. Now, when you talk about the bike erg and using the damper here, it's the same thing, the amount of air that's let in. These flywheels are actually slightly different because this is lower limb. When you push on this, these are bigger muscles. So here, when you go up to 10, you're more than capable of going in like a 6 or a 7 on this for a longer duration because these are bigger muscles that last longer. But when you're doing and working with your damper on the bike, you typically want to keep your RPMs around 80, 85. So you're playing around with that. This can differ from person to person depending on their lower limb strength. So if you're very strong in your legs, like squatting, for example, and you've gotten your strength up, that means that from you doing your steady state bike work, your say 3K pace, you're doing your 3K pace, you got a dampener of 2 or 3, you do your test, you do your strength work with your intervals, or you might be able to go at a slightly higher damper, a slightly higher gear for the duration. The damper is very straightforward. As I said, to summarize it, the higher it is, the more air it lets in, the harder it is to push. The lower it is, the less air it is in it, so it's easier for that flywheel to keep going. So next up, as we move through, the next piece is the technique on the ski. If you're looking at the slideshow, what you might see is items such as the catch and the finish, okay? And we're going to talk about drills as well too when you're doing the ski erg. So the catch. So technique on the ski, all the work is done from here to here, okay? As you go down here, what you now have to do is get your body back up and get back up here to go again. You don't necessarily need to go up on your toes, but when you're doing those shorter pieces, we're not going for a marathon distance on this, it can be quite helpful. So technique, what does it look like? I'm going to grip the handles, but when I grip the handles, I'm letting this do the work. I'm letting the handle just rest on my fingertips, and as well the heel is doing its job by helping to stay in my hands. If I'm gripping this hard, then there's energy being wasted on that ski erg. So again, when I'm doing this, we need to be very, very careful not to be over gripping that handle, okay? The second piece, just making myself a bit bigger so I can see it. As I'm up here, I want to make sure my elbows are slightly bent. If I'm going straight up here, I'm losing out on a load of power. I've left the power out here too much. So typically elbows near enough 90 degrees is perfect. So if I do a couple of strokes, arms length away from the wings, elbows at 90 degrees, I'm going to get the fan going. It's at number 4 there. And over a long duration, that technique there is absolutely perfect. Now, most of my power as I come up here is done from here to here. There, the kind of momentum has carried me over. I get to around here and then I come back up again. So I get it going. So say over a 7-minute piece, my technique might look like so. I'm keeping around 45 to 50 strokes per minute and monitoring my pace. Don't release them too hard. Let them back in easy. So you can see the momentum of that is I'm using my hips, my glutes, my hamstrings. So when I'm up here, my triceps connected to my pecs, my lats, my core. That bit there is where all the power comes from. So there's a drill that I'm going to show you really quickly on this to really maximize getting better at this ski erg. But technique-wise, it's very straightforward. Elbows slightly 90 degrees. Up here, that's the catch position. That's where you feel that little bit of catch. You want it nice and smooth. You drive, pushing with the hips, hamstrings. You get into here, you're finishing, staying kind of keeping the handles in front. You're up, you're recovering, and you're going again. Okay? In relation to that drill, you will typically get something like a black or a purple band, so like a medium grade band. And on this exercise, you're going to connect the band to something quite solid and then run it through. Let me move this bike. Okay, so if you look close enough on the screen here, should be in shot, yeah. You'll see this in the presentation. We're going to firstly, you need to have a strong hollow hold. To be good at the ski erg, if you don't have a decent hollow hold for 60 seconds, it's going to be really hard to be efficient at that because your core needs to transfer the power. So when I'm lying down here, firstly, what I want to make sure I'm doing is my shoulder blades are off the ground and I'm crunching my abs. So my lower back is down. Then I'm going to get my feet up, okay? And then in this position, I'm going to extend my legs out slightly. So that's mimicking that position when I'm on my feet. And then I'm going to grab the band, holding it here, one in either hand, up, crunch my abs, feet here. Make sure there's a bit of tension in the band, so I'm mimicking as if my hands are on my head. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 20 reps, okay? So there in that position, as I'm doing that pull, I'm mimicking. Now I could probably do it coming further out and then just making sure my angles are correct. But all I'm doing there is I'm basically in this position, my core is engaged, pull 1, 2, and then what happens when I go to the ski in this position, my drill that I want you to practice in your conditioning class is then I'm not raising my feet. Elbows at 90. Snap, snap, snap. That's probably one of the most important drills that you can do for your skier technique. That's called your catch. Again, what can be very beneficial too is your pulling strength, like your chin-ups, your rows as well too, but mainly that exercise did on the ground is very transferable. Another great technique to do is a mixture of 30 seconds heavy, not heavy, powerful ball slams around a 6 kg onto like a 12-inch box, because that mimics the distance and the power, that snap the core into kettlebell swings, again, the snap of the hips, coming back up. And then what you have is you have a good sequence of closing the hips from doing that core exercise, and then snapping that extension of the hips with the kettlebell to come back up. So you're training and coaching yourself the pattern. The finish then, as I said, a lot of people kind of squat down, they're in this position. You're doing loads of quarter squats. No wonder they're gassed, because there's so many joints moving. You're putting pressure into the legs, or you want those pressure going into the handles. So that drill will teach you to get some power where it matters, and also not waste time putting your positions down at the bottom into a position where it's a lot tougher to recover from. Now, next one, going on to the dial. Again, this presentation, whatever, won't be that long or workshop, but there's loads of real helpful nuggets. So I think the slideshow that I shared, by the way, on the community group isn't the updated one, so I need to share that one afterwards. The dial here, what you should see, let me know if you can't. I'm sharing the presentation again. It says the dial. RPMs is revolutions per minute on the bike. When I'm training my distance intervals on the bike, RPM wise, I am training them, especially if they're anaerobic, I'm training them at a slightly higher damper to cause me to stay at around 80 to 85 RPMs max. That's training my leg strength on the bike over the course of those intervals. So that's RPM interval training. Now, when it comes to actually doing the tests, you might have the damper slightly lower, holding it at a pace of 85 to 95 RPMs over a 3K distance or 7-minute distance. This changes from person to person. That's why it's so important that when you do that pre-assessment, you get as much data as possible from doing that pre-assessment on that 3K, and you know your numbers. So you know what the average RPM was, you know what the average pace per 1,000 meters was. You also know especially what damper you had that at. On the dial there in front of you, you'll also see, for example, this is interval training. I've done 8 intervals. I've got a total of 302 meters. But another key number to keep an eye on, especially when you're doing the assessment or testing those longer intervals, is my pace there when I did that interval was 139.5 pace. Now that was a sprint, I think, but that was basically giving me my average pace. And when you set that dial up properly for your assessment or your retest, you can actually put in a pacemaker, but you can also see a projected finish time for your 3K bike. So learn to use that. Now here, units, that's the button you click to change from calories to watts to meters. We work from meters when we come to doing our conditioning classes. Display makes it bigger, smaller, shows up different types of stuff. Menu brings it back to the menu. I'm not going to spend an hour or 2 hours going through this dial, but that is something to become obsessive with, play around with. Come in early, do a 10-minute slow piece on the bike, mess around with the dial and see what it does. Bike position. So that brings us now here to this piece. I have a light there and it's blinding me. So your bike position. So basically you want the saddle around the height of the top of the ball and socket joint of your hip. So there's the top of the ball and socket joint. There's the top of my finger. I go on, do a brief pedal backwards, and there you can see my knee is slightly bent at the bottom. Obviously, I have the camera not facing it, so we'll just adjust this so you can see. Turn around. There we go. Hopefully that doesn't fall now. Okay, so here, stop sharing. The saddle position, as I said, find the ball, top of the ball and socket, top of the saddle. The saddle is in line here with the handles. I'm moving these handles maybe forward or back, or I might lower it up and down to make sure it's the same height. But basically with this, I want it in a semi-comfortable position. The position on this matters for the longer duration that you're doing. Like if you know anyone that does a lot of cycling, they will specifically go to a shop or a bike shop where they'll actually where they'll actually set it up for them at proper height. Now, I'm not going to go too fast in this because I don't know how noisy it is. But here in this position, my torso position, I don't want to be rounded. Here in this position, something very, very simple. My diaphragm is closed off, not getting as much air in. You want to be in a position where you're sticking your bum slightly out, upright torso, and then in this position. Now, if I want to get more power, I want to use my glutes. I go lower handles, so that way I'm pushing more into my quad / glutes. If I'm coasting, this position is just fine. But if I really want to go hell for leather, I'm looking at the dials beside me, sprint finish, lean into it, and then that's more of my sprinting position. Again, play around with this so you get the right height, etc. Quick tip as well too, these bikes are very handy just to leave your water there so you can actually have them at reach. RPM damper, we've gone through that. As I said, when it comes to the damper, the bike, you get away with playing around with it a little bit more. Don't go over a 6 or a 7. There's really no need unless there's a point with the programming. Now, next slide I have here in front of me is the programming. So with the programming is where the secret is with this machine. So with this machine, programming wise, and with the ski erg, that's where the fun is, that's where the secret sauce is. But you need to have a base time of, like, say, whatever distance you've done on the bike, and you're going to retest that or reassess that in a couple of weeks. It doesn't mean you have to absolutely kill yourself, but you want to be basically, if you do, say, 2-minute flat, say, for example, you do 6 minutes flat for 3K on this bike, that means your race pace was 2 minutes per 1K. That means you want to be training and doing your intervals faster and teaching your body to go faster. So you're doing intervals at a faster pace so that you're teaching your body to go faster. That means around 155 pace. So I wouldn't be going faster than like 153, 154, depending on the length of the interval. And again, you want to manage your energy, meaning that if you want to get better at the bike or the ski, means sometimes you might need to pull back a little bit on your strength work, go with maintenance on that, but focus on getting stronger for this. Training zones are going to kind of go through this quite fast, get you thinking about it. When the heart rate monitor system is in here, this will make a lot more sense. Basically, people think about distance all the time. I'm going to do my 5K marathon or whatever. Somebody who is running a 2-hour-10 marathon, they're going at that pace. They're going a lot faster. Their heart rate is a lot higher than somebody who is trying to slog through 5-6 hours. If somebody's on a feet for 5 or 6 hours, then the intensity is down really, really low. It feels intense, but the intensity really is still very low. They still able to hold a full conversation, but those guys running 210, they're going very fast. They're not going to be holding the full conversation. So it comes down to training intensity. You can also translate this into the training piece length. So if we look down at the very bottom, if we say we want you to go steady, really what you want to do, steady state, you're going for at least 30 minutes plus to really improve your overall aerobic capacity. That's why the training sessions, total time for the conditioning sessions, last upwards of 30 to 40 minutes, because that translates into really training that aerobic energy training system. After that, 80%, 90%, that's your intervals. They last from anywhere, as you know, from 30 seconds. So if we're going 30 seconds, we're at the top of the pyramid. We're going fast at around 95 to 100%. Again, this is something that I would take a screenshot of, keep it, and then kind of note intensity versus time. Now, this differs depending on the machine, but again, for now, Here you can see, I think this is an example by Coach Bergen, Roth or whatever his name is, of rowing. So you can see 6 by 500 meters, 3 by 1000. As we go down here, time, length goes up. So it's short, more at the top, shorter distance, shorter time, longer distance, longer time. So again, this is something to look and get your head around as you start training a little bit more. This matches up then, training intensity on the far left side. 100% max heart rate. You're going in the red zone. You're working on your VO2 max. You're bloody killing it when you're in that red zone. That comes back to here. You're talking about your 90%. You can see that that's dark red. Anaerobic, you're producing a good bit of lactic acid. It's a longer kind of duration piece. Typically the length of time, if you're going around 80% there, we come down here. You're doing length of time of anywhere from typically 3 to 7 minutes, and you're going to be producing a lot of lactic acid. You can produce lactic acid a much shorter distance and much shorter time as well too. But again, if I say to you today we're going to do anaerobic training, you're training in that zone, you're holding in that zone, getting used to it over say a 2 or 3 minute piece on the bike, and then you're allowing yourself to recover, flush out the lactic acid and do it again. In relation to this, the colors, you have age at the top as well, a rough max heart rate. So I'm 33. So here, say for example, look at 33, 35. My max heart rate, 190 to 185 is what it's saying. I've actually done it before. My watch tracks everything, and because I'm quite trained individual and I've ran for years and years, my max heart rate is more around 201. So this differs from person to person. You kind of need to figure this out. I know Shane, who's just started here as well too, his max heart rate is actually much, much higher than that as well. So this changes from person to person. This is just a rough guide. Have a look through that as well too. I would kind of ignore fitness fat burn thing. You'll start confusing yourself with, oh, I'm not burning fat if I'm here. You are, but don't get too confused or too caught up about this training zone. So that's basically it, guys. You might have some time for some questions now if you do, but this whole thing should give you a really good concept of the technique on this machine. I won't go into strokes per minute, but you can see the detail when it comes to actually the training, the programming. It does have a place, especially when you're trying to get better and get faster over some of those distances that we've already tested in the gym. So now would be the chance for any questions, guys. I'll leave it recording and I'll edit it out if we need to. Can people hear me? Leave another minute for questions. How long was that? 20? Yeah, 20 minutes. Told us 20 minutes. You can unmute yourselves and tell me if it's even half good.
Don't have any questions.
Although, I don't think I can hear you guys because I have you connected to this. 1 second, Aideen. I think you're trying to talk to me, but I don't have you connected to... Now, Aideen, you can talk and I'll be able to hear you.
I was just saying I didn't have a question.
Hopefully that answers most. Was there little nuggets in that that are a little bit helpful?
Yeah, they are, yeah.
Good, excellent. Well, enjoy your... Are you on holidays?
No, not we're flying tomorrow.
Oh, good. I was going to say to get off this call if you're on holidays. Liz, you're probably busy with the kids. Thanks, guys. Hopefully that was of some value. I'll upload it after this as well too, so others can take something from it.
Okay, thank you.
See you later, guys. Well done.
Bye.